What's up, everybody? Welcome back. So, hope you all had a lot of fun in the Chesnaught Calm Day over the weekend. I know I'm a couple of days late on this, but I was actually super excited for this Calm Day because finally we have the community days for the Carlos starters. And as I mentioned a number of times in my previous videos, Carlos is definitely my favorite generation, or rather, Gen 6 is my favorite generation of Pokemon. And I'm super excited for the Calm Days to follow, like Fennekin and Froakie, especially when Ash Greninja comes around, hopefully in the month of March or May or whenever that is. But anyways, as far as Chesnaught is concerned, I'm pretty sure most of you might have tried it out already in the Master League Premier Classic. It's ranked pretty high. It's actually ranked number 12 and it's a pretty good anti-meta option. And for this particular team comp, I'm going to be using it alongside Gyarados and Gengar. Now, Gengar and Chesnaught actually form a pretty good combination because they provide decent coverage for each other's weaknesses and they form a pretty solid core, right? And of course, Gyarados is arguably one of the best safe swaps in this meta. So even though these are some early ranked battles, obviously not the perfect showcase, but it definitely gets a little bit more competitive as we progress into it. So moving on to the first battle here, we have Chesnaught into an Excadrill. This is the dream lead. I mean, Chesnaught is probably one of the hardest counters to Excadrill. It's one of the very few typings that actually resists both rock and ground type moves, the other typing being grass ground, which is Torterra, which is as common in this meta, which is why Chesnaught is probably the hardest counter, right? But they make an incredible catch onto their Gyarados. I switch into my own Gyarados here because I just want to preserve the Chesnaught for their Excadrill later, right? And I do want to win switch advantage preferably because I want to make sure that I maintain that positive matchup. They do shield the crunch here. At this point, I'm just going to go for the Aqua Tail right now. Even though this is resisted, this should be more than enough to take it out from this range, right? As it does there, which is fantastic. So we have switch advantage. I can align my Chesnaught against their Excadrill again. Back in comes Excadrill. They're not going to be able to farm down because those ground type fast moves are double resisted. And they're going to go for a move. It is going to be a Rock Slide. That's absolutely fine. I can just basically come in with my Chesnaught here. And the charge move coming through. Again, everything here is resisted, right? Rock Slide, Drill Run. It doesn't really matter. It is a Drill Run that still does a decent amount of damage, but doesn't matter. Once again, I'm going to build up to the back-to-back superpowers. Going to go for the first superpower here, and they have a Conkeldurr at the back, and this is absolutely perfect for me because I have a Gengar in the back. Again, pretty much kind of a hard counter to a Conkeldurr, right? I do have to obviously watch out for Stone Edge, but I'm just going to try and go for the back-to-back Shadow Punches here just to get that final shield. And it does get the final shield. And at this point, I'm just going to let Gengar go through because this is a Chesnaught showcase. It is the Frenzy Plant Chesnaught showcase. So might as well let Gengar go through. Basically, we still have 2 shields left. Gonna come in with my Chesnaught, go for the Frenzy Plant here. Even Superpower would have been enough, but I just want to finish with the Frenzy Plant. And that's going to take it out there. So like I said, relatively easier battles to start off with, but it definitely gets a little bit more competitive as we progress. So moving on to the next one here, we have again an absolutely beautiful matchup against Swampert. Again, Chesnaught completely walled Swampert because considering that most Swamperts are not running Sludge Wave in the Master Premier Classic, they do go for the Hydro Cannon here, and we're able to farm up as much energy as we can. They're going to go for another Hydro Cannon right now. Again, not really going to do too much damage. And now they make a switch into their Rhyperior, which is by no stretch of imagination a counter to a Chesnaught. In fact, Chesnaught is probably one of the hardest Rhyperior counters. So I'm going to build up to the back-to-back superpowers again. Once again, go for the second superpower here, hoping to draw a shield. It does get the shield, and at this point, I'm just going to go for the Frenzy Plant. Even though this is double debuffed, Rhyperior is double weak to grass because of the rock ground typing, and it's still one-shots there, which is pretty incredible. Back in comes Swampert. I switch in my Gyarados to clear the debuffs, and there's absolutely nothing Swampert can do, right? We have 2 pretty solid checks to Swampert in this team comp. Even though Gengar is slightly weak to Swampert, you have Gyarados and Chesnaught, which are probably some of the hardest walls to it. And also this team is pretty solid against Metagross, again another common Pokemon in the Master Premier Classic meta. And we also get a defense drop as well, and this is absolutely beautiful because I can just go for the Aqua Tail right now, and we're going to be able to fully Dragon Breath down, and we basically got all 3 Pokemon 2 Shield Flex on them. So moving on to the next one here, we have Chesnaught into a Dragonite. This is where things can get slightly tricky because I'm going to switch in my Gengar because my Gyarados is possibly my harder counter to a Dragonite. So I switch in my Gengar, which obviously doesn't have a great matchup either. As you can see, those Dragon Breaths are absolutely chunking. I'm trying to build up to the back-to-back Shadow Punches right now. I'm going to go for the first one here to hopefully draw a shield. It actually does get the shield. Immediately going to go for the next Shadow Punch right now. Try and just do as much damage as I can to this Dragonite. They actually double shield, which is really interesting. This is okay for me as well. I can come in with my Gyarados right now, and I'm going to try and completely Dragon Breath down. I'm just going to let the first one go through. Probably just going to be a Dragon Claw here, but they are quite loaded on energy, so they should be able to get to another one right now. And I'm going to have to shield this up. I'm going to shield this up and probably farm this thing all the way down so that I can come out of this matchup with a lot of energy, right? I'm going to farm it all the way down. We're almost at 2 Aqua Tails right now, and let's see what they decide to come in with here. They actually cover their Metagross and then immediately switch into their Ursaluna. So luckily I don't throw the Crunch. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have thrown this Aqua Tail either. I should have preserved that energy because once again, Chesnaught is one of the hardest Ursaluna counters, right? Because of that normal ground typing, you got to be able to hit for super effective with both Superpower and Frenzy Plant as well. Just gonna again farm up as much as energy as I can. Gonna go with the Frenzy Plant here just because I don't want to debuff with the superpower. Probably in hindsight, like I said, I should have preserved the Aqua Tail because one Frenzy Plant would have taken out the Ursaluna anyways. Gonna go for the superpower against the Metagross here. Gonna be able to get to another one right now. I just decided to throw the first one right away because I wanted to get less farm on the Metagross, and we have an Aqua Tail ready to go. But the unfortunate thing is we might lose CMP here. We have an Aqua Tail. I'm trying to switch in my Gyarados. Unfortunately, my switch timer does not come back up in time. If my switch timer had come back up 1 second earlier, I probably could have switched immediately into my Gyarados, gotten off an Aqua Tail, and caught them off guard there. But unfortunately, we end up taking an L there. That's okay. Moving on to the next one here, we have Chesnaught into another Dragonite right now. This time I played slightly differently. I switched into my Gyarados this time. Ideally, you do want to switch into the Gengar, but this actually works out perfectly, right? The other advantage with Chesnaught leads and Gengar in the back is that when you switch into into your Gyarados, you're going to bait out the normal type. I mean, most likely probably a Snorlax. I mean, Gengar, especially with this double ghost moveset, gets completely walled by Snorlax. So you definitely want to bait out the Snorlax here. I'd rather have this in this matchup rather than having it against Gengar. So I'm going to shield up this Body Slam here because I absolutely want to win switch advantage, because Chesnaught has absolutely zero play against Dragonite. I do let the second Body Slam go through here. I'm going to go for the Aqua Tail right now. Hopefully they let this go through, and which they do, and now I'm going to be able to win switch advantage here. We are going to be able to Dragon Breath down, even though we're down a shade, which is not an ideal situation to be in. At least I don't have to have my Chesnaught go up against the Dragonite. But this isn't a great matchup either because Gengar gets absolutely destroyed by these Dragon Breaths. They go for the Dragon Claw here. I'm going to try and go for the Shadow Punch. I'm really hoping they let this go through because I definitely want to see the back of this Dragonite here. Another Charge Bomb coming through. This is unfortunate because if it's a Dragon Claw, it's going to do quite a bit of damage. But I don't understand why. They probably misclicked that. They went for the Superpower, which ends up working out perfectly for me because Gengar obviously triple resists fighting type moves. So I definitely got a lot lucky there, because if they'd gone for the Dragon Claw, this game would have been over there. As you can see, they have an Ursaluna in the back. I go for the Frenzy Plant, one-shots it. Back in comes Dragonite. I go for the Superpower immediately to try and draw that final shield. And I'm going to try and get to another Superpower here, which is why they're forced to throw their charge move right now. It's going to be a Dragon Claw, which is going to be taking out my Chesnaught. And I'm just going to be able to come in my Gengar here and finish off with this Shadow Punch. Again, I had absolutely no right to win this game. Like I said, they probably misclicked that. They should have gone for the Dragon Claw, and if they did, I probably would have lost it. So yeah, anyways, moving on to the next battle here, we have Chesnaught into another Excadrill, as good as it gets right now. Typically when you have Excadrill leads, you're going to win 9 times out of 10, right? Charge move coming through, it's going to, again, doesn't really matter what this is. It's just a drill run, which really doesn't do too much damage. And they are staying in. I'm going to build up to the back-to-back superpowers, and once again, they make an incredible catch onto their Gyarados here. That's pretty good play on their part. I immediately switch into my own Gyarados here, and I'm going to try and go for this Crunch right now, which I am able to get to. So they're probably building up to an Outrage, because if they were trying to get to a Crunch, they should have gotten to it by now. And I'm trying to farm it down, but they barely make it to an Outrage. Even if this is an Outrage, we should be barely able to survive this, as we do right there. And we survive with minimum health, and once again, maintaining switch advantage, which is absolutely crucial in this matchup. The outcomes Primarina, it's absolutely critical that I won switch advantage, because now I can align my Gengar against their Primarina, and then I have my Chesnaught against their Excadrill, and one works out perfectly. This is why Chesnaught and Gengar actually form a pretty solid core, because Gengar can handle some of those Charmers, and Chesnaught can also handle some Dark types, normal types, etc., which Gengar would be weak to, right? So again, now they make a switch into their Excadrill. They try to sort of basically catch me off guard there, but luckily I'm able to switch in my Chesnaught and catch the drill run there. I'm going to build up to the back-to-back superpowers. Unfortunately, I end up losing CMP tie. I'm going to have to shield this up, because even though this resisted drill run would probably take out the Chesnaught from this range. And I'm just going to go for the superpower right now. This should be taking out the Excadrill. If it does get the shield, we should be able to get to another one as well. And yeah, they probably shouldn't have shielded that, but it doesn't really matter, because we're going to win this game either way there. So out comes Primarina right now, and at this point I can just come in my Gengar, I can just shield this up safely, and we should be able to get to a Shadow Punch. I mean, Psychic would have absolutely one-shot even from full health, right? Able to get to another Shadow Punch here, and this is going to do more than enough damage to take out the Primarina, and that's going to take the win for us there. Again, Pokemon like Primarina, Togekiss, Florges, etc. That's where Gengar comes in clutch in this team comp. Even though, again, it's supposed to be strong against Charmers, it still takes quite a bit of damage because of how glassy it is, but it's pretty okay. So now moving on to the next one here, we are up against a Florges. It's a Fairy Wind Florges. Not the best matchup here because we are taking super effective damage from the Disarming Voice. So I'm going to shield this up, but then the good thing is that Frenzy Plant still does quite a bit of damage in this matchup, right? Unlike probably going up against a Togekiss, it's better off going up against Florges because it doesn't resist Grass type moves. I'm gonna have to shield this up the second Disarming Voice here. I'm gonna farm up a little bit and go for the next Frenzy Plant right now. It's going to do quite a bit of neutral damage. As you can see, it does about 50% of Florges' health. And I'm going to try and switch out. Unfortunately, I don't switch out in time. So Disarming Voice is going to do quite a bit of damage. I'm going to basically bank a Frenzy Plant and then switch in my Gengar and farm all the way down here. They're going to go for a move right now. Probably just going to be a Disarming Voice, which is resisted. Still does about 30% of Gengar's health, which is understandable. And then I'm able to farm down as well, which is nice. And we have quite a bit of loaded energy, and they come in with their Metagross. Now, Metagross is definitely not a Gengar counter, which tells me that whatever they have in the back is probably even weaker to Gengar, or they accidentally brought out their Metagross. And I get the shield with the Shadow Punch, and I'm able to get to a Shadow Ball here. This is going to do massive damage against the Metagross, pretty much one-shot it there. And they have a Garchomp in the back, so it's interesting why they didn't choose to bring it out. I mean, I definitely feel like they probably misclicked and brought out their Metagross instead. I go with the Frenzy Plant, does so much damage against the Garchomp here. And this game should be over because nothing they have is going to one-shot a Gyarados from full health. It is going to be an Outrage which does a significant amount of damage. But I'm able to get to an Aqua Tail here. Again, this is going to do more than enough neutral damage to take this game for us there. Again, like I said, I mean, probably not the most competitive battles. Unlike probably in the higher ranks where people are likely to make lesser mistakes. I definitely got lucky in a couple of battles. But like I said, I mean, it's definitely a lot more competitive than it used to be in previous seasons, these early ranked battles. Again, apologies that I've not been able to play too much this season, which is why, I've probably not been able to showcase some ace or veteran or expert ranked battles, right? But anyways, moving on to the next one here, I managed to catch a Meteor Mash on my Gyarados here, which is nice. And we're able to catch, basically soak up another one. The good thing about this is that if you actually go for 2 Aqua Tails, rather than going for 1 crunch, you're going to be able to get to 2 of it, which is why I throw the Aqua Tail. As you can see, I'm barely going to be able to make it to another Aqua Tail, which is absolutely massive, right? Because this is going to put this Metagross into Shadow Claw farm down range for Gengar. So at this point, I'm just going to basically come in with my Gengar right now, and then we're going to fully Shadow Claw down here. Charge move coming through. Absolutely have to shield everything that Metagross throws. It's probably going to one-shot anyways. So we're going to fully Shadow Claw down right now, and we have a ton of energy, and they have an Excadrill at the back. So at this point, I'm just going to go for the Shadow Punch. Typically, most Excadrills do shield because of how glassy it is. I should get a shield with the Shadow Punch. I'm going to try and, at this point, I'm going to shield this up and immediately switch into my Chesnaught and go for the Super. We have absolutely loaded energy. Immediately going into the Chesnaught, catching them off guard here, and trying to snipe with Superpower. Pretty much one-shots the Excadrill, and they have a Togekiss in the back. So just as well, though, we managed to preserve the Gengar, because again, if I hadn't done that, then this would have been real trouble, right? Again, Frenzy Plant is definitely going to put it just about in Shadow Ball range, and a couple of Shadow Claws here. So I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball right now. Again, I'm going to do massive neutral damage against the Togekiss and a couple extra Shadow Claws, and that's going to take it out there. It's pretty close. A lot closer than it should have been, but we take that win anyways. Moving on to the next battle here, we have, again, as you can see, we've steadily been progressing now to rank 7, which is again miles away from where I should have been at this time in the season, but that's okay. Still plenty of time left, I believe. We are going up against another Metagross. The game plan is the same. Basically count up and try and catch a Meteor Mash on the Gyarados here. It is resisted obviously because of the water typing, and they are staying in, which is pretty interesting. This time I tried to play it out a little bit differently. In hindsight, again, I should have done what I did in the previous game, which is gone for the back-to-back Aqua Tails rather than trying to go for a crunch. I was hoping they wouldn't shield this, and I was hoping for a defense drop. In hindsight, probably going for the Aqua Tail was better. As you can see, they do shield that. Unfortunately, no defense drop as well. And I'm barely not able to make it to the Aqua Tail, right? I fall 1 turn short, which would have been easier if I had gone for the Aqua Tail. Again, gonna come in my Gengar, farm down. Hopefully, I can farm this Metagross all the way down before they can get to another move. They make a switch into their Rhyperior, which ends up working out perfectly for me. Immediately coming into the Chesnaught, going for the Frenzy Plant here, absolutely one-shots the Rhyperior. And back in comes Metagross. I'm going to build up to the back-to-back superpowers right now. And I'm just going to go for the first one here. It's probably going to get the shield. And it actually does. So I'm going to go with the second superpower now because it's debuffed. This might not be enough to KO. I'm really hoping it is enough to KO, but they survive with literally 1 HP and they're able to get to a move. I'm going to have to preserve my Chesnaught just in case they have a normal type in the back. I just want to keep my options open just in case they have a Pokemon that gets completely walled, or that, that completely walls Gengar. But they have a Garchomp, which is okay, pretty decent. Go for the superpower here, which actually does quite a bit of damage against Garchomp, just enough to basically put it into Shadow Ball range. So I'm going to be able to come in my Gengar, go for the Shadow Ball here. It does massive damage, and a couple of Shadow Claws should be able to take it out. This is pretty close to a Sand Tomb there, and honestly, Sand Tomb takes out about 60% of Gengar's health, right? Or probably slightly lesser or a bit more, but yeah, definitely very, very, very close nevertheless. Another Excadrill in the lead, we've seen this play out quite often. They are staying in, which is absolutely perfect for me. I do have to watch out for a potential catch. Typically, most people tend to switch out of the second superpower. I do soak up the Rock Slide. I believe it's better off going for Drill Run because it at least has stab coming from Excadrill. I switched into my Gyarados against the Dragonite. Honestly, my Gyarados is the best response to a Dragonite. Dragonite is definitely a little bit of an issue for this team comp because I don't really have a hard counter to it. Gyarados, like I said, is my only decent response to it. I go for the Aqua Tail, which does give the shield, which means that I should be able to get to a second one. This should probably get the second shield or put the Dragonite pretty low. It does put it pretty low. Unfortunately, I still lose switch advantage. I come in with my Gengar here and I have to shield this up. I mean, they probably have 2 Dragon Claws right now. I do shield the first one and they're able to get to another one just as the Shadow Claw goes through. This is unfortunate for me. This is going to do quite a bit of damage. But I can't give up both shields here, right? So I'm hoping that my biggest threat to the Chesnaught's biggest threat is out of the way. Switching immediately into my Chesnaught, going for the superpower here. And superpower actually gets the shield from the Excadrill. Going for the second superpower right now. This is obviously not going to do as much as the first one, but it's still going to put it into Vine Whip farm down range, and they have a Swampert at the back. And even though Frenzy Plant here is double debuffed, Swampert being double weak to grass, Frenzy Plant is going to near one shot here and Vine Whip takes it out. And Excadrill absolutely has no play in the back there. So ends up working out perfectly for me. They had 2 Pokemon incredibly weak to Chesnaught, and yeah, that allowed us to take an easy win there. So moving on to some rank 8 battles, like I said, this is where it got a little bit more competitive. Moving on to this one here, we have a Chesnaught into a Metagross, pretty much the same game plan, try and count as much as I can, and then basically switch in my Gyarados to catch the Medium Ash here. So once again, Medium Ash being resistive because of the water typing, and again, they're staying in, which is really interesting, right? They are continuing to stay in. They're going to go for another move. It's going to be another Medium Ash here, which we should survive. Again, I'm going to go for the double Aqua Tail strategy right now. I'm going to be able to get to a first one, but unfortunately they snuck a Bullet Punch through, which means that I'm not probably going to be able to get to another one, which is unfortunate. I should have been able to get to it, as you can see. Gyarados feints with the Aqua Tail here, but this means that Gengar is going to be able to load up a ton of energy. So I'm really hoping they don't get to another Medium Ash here, because I'm going to try and fully farm down this Metagross. It's going to be very, very close. As you can see, they were pretty much one Bullet Punch short of the next Medium Ash there, which ends up working out perfectly for me, because Gengar with this much energy is absolutely devastating. Out comes the Dragonite right now. I'm going to go for the Shadow Punch Shield Bait, which we don't get the shield. Immediately going to go for the Shadow Ball. I'm really hoping they think it's a Shadow Punch, because I really need to get this Dragonite out of here. And Shadow Ball does so much damage, and it ends up being a double KO. I'm going to come to my Chesnaught, hoping that whatever they have in the back is weak to Chesnaught, but they have a Togekiss. So they have a Dragonite and a Togekiss in the same team. There's absolutely nothing that I can do right now, because Chesnaught has absolutely zero play against a Togekiss. They're basically flexing at this point. They're not even shielding because they don't really have to. They can comfortably tank another Frenzy Plant as well. But yeah, and that's just unfortunate. It's purely based on team comp. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's not the most ideal team comp, but it works most of the times. Moving on to the next one here, we have a Gyarados in the lead. They make an immediate switch into their Dragonite. I go into my own Dragonite, or my Gyarados I should say, and Charge Move coming through from the Dragonite. I'm going to actually shield this up because I do want to win switch advantage. I want to make sure I have my Chesnaught on their Gyarados. I'm going to double shield, which is probably not the most ideal move given the fact that I have a Gengar in the back, and Gengar without shield advantage, you're definitely asking for trouble there. But I'm going for the Aqua Tail here, and I'm going to try and just Dragon Breath down a little bit more, going for the second Aqua Tail right now. Let's see if they want to give up both their shields here. They actually don't, and I'm going to be able to Dragon Breath down. So even though I'm down a shield, I'm one switch advantage, which is nice. And they actually come in their own Gyarados here, which is a Waterfall Gyarados, which ends up working out even better for me, because Chesnaught has an incredible matchup against Waterfall Gyarados, right? Especially if they're not running Outrage, if they're running Waterfall, Crunch, and Aqua Tail, then Chesnaught completely walls Gyarados. But unfortunately, they have a Garchomp in the back, and I can't really switch out of my Gengar here, because Gengar being weak to ground, yeah, it's not the perfect matchup here. So I'm going to try and go for another Frenzy Plant right now. This is not the most ideal situation to be in. Frenzy Plant does quite a bit of damage. Into Garchomp, I'm hoping it's gotten it down to Shadow Punch range, but they go for the Outrage here, which is understandable. I try and go into my Gengar. I'm going to try and get to a Shadow Punch, which I'm barely able to get to a Shadow Punch here. And I'm really hoping this KOs. But it does not KO. They survive with very minimum HP, and just as the Shadow Claw goes through, they're able to get off a move. It's going to be a Sand Tomb here. Massive, super effective damage against Gengar, and back in comes Gyarados, and that's going to take the win there. So if the Garchomp had fainted before the Sand Tomb came through, I might have had a chance there. But we finished with a 3-2 set. I had more, pretty much like predominantly 4-1, 5-0 sets, but finished with a 3-2 set, which is not the best at rank 8, but yeah, we'll take that at the stage there. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. And yeah, I'll see you next time.